Diana's fingers trembled uncontrollably. The clock read 11:47 p.m., July 28, 1981. Inside the quiet walls of Clarence House in London, she sat frozen. Tomorrow, her walk down the aisle would be watched by 750 million people around the world, all waiting to see her become Princess of Wales. But in this lonely bedroom, everything was coming undone. Prince Charles had just spoken a sentence that shattered the world she thought she knew. "Diana, I do not love you." She didn't move. Her mascara traced dark rivers down her cheeks, while the wedding gown loomed behind her, a pale specter of hope, now lost. This was supposed to be a fairy tale, but not tonight. Not on the eve of Britain's most anticipated wedding, not with her face printed on every mug and plate across the country. Escape was impossible now. What followed in the next few hours and what happened on their wedding night became secrets, hidden for years. The truth is far more devastating than anyone could have imagined. And it all began with a confession that, if it had gone any further, might have changed history. Charles stood in the doorway, sharply dressed for the evening, but he couldn't meet her eyes. His voice was steady, but his words left no room for doubt. "I need to be honest with you." Then came the confirmation Diana had dreaded ever since she found Camilla's bracelet. From every uneasy glance at polo matches, and from the moment she realized this union was a carefully crafted snare and she had walked right into it, Charles's words were blunt and cold. "I am marrying you because I must," he said, almost as if he were reading from a script. "The crown demands an heir. You fit the role, but my affections are all for another." It was always Camilla. Diana could barely say the name, her voice trembled, so quiet it was almost lost in the silence. Charles didn't try to deny it. In that moment, his face showed either a hint of sympathy or just the tired relief of a man finally letting go of a mask he'd worn too long. "I won't deceive you, Diana. Not about her. Tomorrow we'll smile for the world. We'll pretend, because it's what's expected. But you deserve the truth. I'm simply fulfilling my obligation. That is the truth." Diana felt suffocated by the weight of it all. Every instinct told her to run, to call her family, to grab a phone and beg someone, anyone, to save her from this nightmare. But as hopelessness threatened to overwhelm her, Diana remembered her sister's words from just a few days earlier. Words that now echoed with sharp, bitter irony. "Your face is on the tea towels, Dutch. There's no turning back now." That stark reminder of her fate calmed her panic. In that instant, everything shifted. Diana made the choice that would define her future. She straightened up, wiped away her tears, and fixed her eyes on the man she was about to marry. Her voice was steady, carrying the weight of new resolve. "Then I shall do my duty as well," she replied, "but do not ever expect my love." Charles left, closing the door behind him in silence. Alone, Diana sat at the edge of her bed, weeping until there were no more tears. The clock struck 3 in the morning. Every sob left her more drained, until all that remained was an aching emptiness. She was only 20 years old, her dreams of happiness snuffed out before they ever had a chance to begin. And yet, what truly happened that night has slipped through the cracks of history. There was more than just tears behind closed doors. For 40 years, the palace kept a secret hidden from the world. Diana's pain didn't end with crying. In the quiet darkness, she picked up a pen and poured her heart onto paper, a letter meant for a secret hiding spot, intended for only one person to ever find. This letter was her protection and her silent act of defiance. Carefully, Diana recorded every word Charles had spoken, listing each broken promise made before they even said their vows. She folded the letter, dated it, and tucked it into a hidden seam of her jewelry box, leaving behind a chilling instruction. "If anything happens to me under suspicious circumstances, let this truth be known." At just 20 years old, on the eve of history's most celebrated wedding, Diana discovered a reality few dared to acknowledge. This family wasn't just skilled at breaking hearts, they would destroy anyone they saw as a threat. And a young woman, wounded but unafraid, was the greatest danger of all. Morning arrived in an instant. July 29, 1981, the day the world had waited for with breathless anticipation. Festive chaos swept across London. The streets overflowed with cheering crowds. Many had camped out all night, hoping for even a brief glimpse of the fairy tale bride. Across 74 nations, 750 million viewers tuned in, making this the most watched event since humanity's first steps on the moon. But behind the grandeur of Clarence House, Diana was once again doubled over, sick with dread. Bulimia had become her constant corrosive companion, and it only worsened as the engagement went on. The scale told a story no one else could see, her waist shrinking from 29 inches to just 23.5. The dressmakers altered her wedding gown 3 times, just to keep up with how quickly her frame was withering away. Her hands shook so much that her makeup artist had to steady them just to draw on her eyeliner. "Are you ready, my lady?" her dresser asked, gently fanning out the 25-foot train of Diana's iconic ivory silk taffeta dress. Ready? The word almost made her laugh. Was she ready to marry a man who only hours before admitted that love wasn't part of the deal? Ready to smile for a sea of cameras while numbness pressed down on her chest? Ready to face a lifetime in a glittering cage built on beautiful lies? "Yes," she replied, "I am ready." The glass coach rattled through London as crowds erupted in bright adoration. "Diana, Diana, we love you, Diana," they cheered from the pavements. Diana smiled, but her eyes searched the sea of faces for just one, looking for Camilla Parker Bowles. Was Camilla out there somewhere, watching? Maybe even smirking, as Diana stepped into the arms of a man whose heart never truly left someone else. On a side street near St. Paul's Cathedral, anticipation hung in the air. Inside, 3,500 guests waited in hushed excitement. The Archbishop of Canterbury stood ready. The mighty sound of the organ filled the vast space, a cue fit for a legend. He would soon proclaim, "These are the dreams on which fairy tales are built. But real fairy tales don't start with a groom declaring someone else as his true love. Real fairy tales don't center on a bride so weakened by hunger that she can barely stand, her body worn down from days without food. And real fairy tales don't let their villains hide in plain sight." Diana glided down the seemingly endless aisle, her father steady at her side. With every step she felt last night's agony, the memory of Charles's face, his cold confession, and honesty that felt almost cruel. At the altar, Charles risked a glance her way. Their eyes met. His expression was strangely calm, as though he'd already accepted a life behind golden bars. When the ceremony began, even their vows seemed to reveal the cracks. Diana stumbled over the names Philip, Charles, Arthur, George, mixing up the order. Charles made his own mistake, saying "thy worldly goods" instead of "thy goods." On this grand stage, the very words themselves seemed to rebel, refusing to add grace to a union founded on pretense. Then came a moment that would echo through history, a single act that shook royal tradition. The palace tried to stop it, but Diana held firm. She left out one word from her wedding vows. Just one decision, but it changed everything. Diana refused to promise she would obey. Standing before the Archbishop, the monarch, and a global audience of 750 million people, Diana Spencer made her independence clear. She would not give up her identity. She would not disappear into the machinery of monarchy. The royal family was outraged, but it was too late. The choice was made, live and immortalized, forever part of the story. With that quiet act, Diana drew her first line in the sand, though almost no one noticed. Then came the famous balcony scene at Buckingham Palace. The roar of the crowd was deafening. Flashbulbs exploded around them. Charles gave her a stiff, tentative kiss, barely grazing her lips before pulling away. The crowd pleaded for more, chanting and urging them on, hoping for another display. Reluctantly, Charles complied. He was uncomfortable, performing every movement for the audience. Diana kept up her radiant facade, smiling brightly for the cameras, while inside she was unraveling. The devastating truth began to take hold. This was her reality. Now, every private moment would become public property. Every gesture was just theater, and behind each beaming grin, Diana hid the truth. That night, Diana and Charles boarded the royal train and made their way to Broadlands, the very same estate where the Queen and Prince Philip had spent their wedding night. The message was clear. This was meant to carry on a legacy, passing tradition from one generation to the next. But in reality, tradition wasn't being honored, it was breaking apart. Behind closed doors, a different story was unfolding, a story carefully hidden from the world for 40 years. It was nearly 10 p.m. when they arrived at Broadlands. The staff had already prepared the master suite for a romantic evening. Champagne chilled, roses strewn across silk sheets, the stage was perfectly set. Charles popped the cork and poured 2 glasses, handing one to Diana. She accepted, but her body wouldn't let her drink. Months of relentless bulimia had made it impossible to swallow, even the finest champagne. Charles loosened his tie, breaking the silence. "Well, we did it. We put on their spectacle." Diana set her untouched glass aside, her hands trembling again. She tried to speak about what happened the night before. "Charles, about last night, about what you said." His reply was quick, carrying a sharp warning. "Let's not go there now. But if not now, then when? When would they finally confront the unbearable truth, his lack of love, his feelings for someone else, the sham their marriage had become?" Charles looked back at her with a coldness Diana had never felt before. His voice was steady and almost mechanical as he spoke. "Our marriage is not an illusion, it's a responsibility. It's what is expected of us. I have fulfilled my obligation. I married you. I stood in that cathedral. I kissed you for the cameras. What more could you possibly want? Her own voice trembled as hope began to fade. I want you to make an effort, she whispered. I want you to at least try to love me. I want us to have a real chance. You're chasing a storybook life, Diana. You want romance, devotion, all those magical things promised by old novels. But that's not what this is. This is a royal alliance. It's about preserving the monarchy, producing heirs, and keeping stability. If you can't accept that, unhappiness is certain for both of us. Diana looked at the man she had just vowed to spend her life with. Suddenly, he felt like a stranger. In that moment, Diana realized a bitter truth that would linger over the next 16 years. He wouldn't bend, he wouldn't reach for her, he never intended to love her. Diana exhaled softly, resignation settling over her. Then let us finish what we must, she said. What happened next she would later confide to her closest friends, shattered even their expectations. That first night was cold and empty. There was no warmth. Charles fulfilled his marital duty exactly as he had promised, efficient, detached, and completely lacking in tenderness. There was no gentle reassurance, no thought for Diana's fear, her innocence, or her longing for comfort. When it was over, Charles simply rolled away, switched off the lamp, and slipped into sleep, as if nothing at all had happened. Alone in the darkness, Diana let silent tears gather and soak her silken pillow. This was her wedding night. The night she had dreamed of as a child, now reduced to an agony of loneliness, an emptiness that hurt more than she could have ever imagined. But this was only the beginning. With the sunrise, the honeymoon began. It was then that the true depth of Charles's devotion to Camilla became painfully clear to Diana. The newlyweds set sail aboard the royal yacht Britannia, embarking on what was meant to be a fairy tale journey through the Mediterranean. The world pictured them basking in romantic seclusion, falling head over heels, starting their own storybook life together. But behind closed doors, the reality was heartbreakingly different. On their very first morning, Diana noticed a pair of unfamiliar cufflinks on Charles. They were gold, beautifully engraved. Over breakfast, she asked about them politely. Charles simply brushed off her question. That evening, while he showered, Diana's curiosity took over. She examined the cufflinks closely, two interlocked C's, Camilla's signature. On their honeymoon, he'd chosen to wear a token from his lover. By the third day, the wounds were only getting deeper. While searching for a book in Charles's quarters, Diana stumbled upon his diary. Tucked inside were photographs, not old memories, but recent pictures of Camilla. Charles had brought reminders of his mistress into the sacred space of their new marriage. Overcome with emotion, Diana raced to the bathroom and retched until there was nothing left. By the fifth day, their facade was growing thinner by the hour. Around then, the phone rang in their quarters. Charles answered behind a closed door. His voice changed softer, more gentle, filled with laughter Diana had never heard directed at her. She edged closer, trying to catch fragments of the conversation through the wall. When he finally emerged, 20 minutes later, she asked who had been on the line. Just a friend, he replied, evasive. But in her gut, Diana knew it was Camilla. He wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. By the seventh day, unable to contain the storm inside her, Diana tried to reach him. Desperate, she pleaded. Why, she asked, did he need to have traces of Camilla around, even on the one trip meant just for them? Couldn't he spare her these 2 weeks, just 2 short weeks? Charles's answer stung like ice. Diana, I never said I would stop loving her. I gave my word to marry you, and I have. My heart is mine alone. The days that followed drifted by in a blur. Charles buried himself in philosophical texts, shutting her out completely. He painted watercolors, quiet and alone, perched at the very edge of the yacht. Often he disappeared for private phone calls. When he returned, there was always a trace of Camilla's perfume reminding her that distance could erase nothing. Diana, isolated, wept alone in her stateroom. Every meal ended the same way. She forced herself to empty her stomach, desperately trying to regain a small sense of control. Her diary slowly filled with aching words. I am on my honeymoon, and I have never felt so utterly alone. The world, however, saw something very different. Photos released to the public painted an illusion, Diana looking radiant in her swimsuit, slender and glowing. Charles by her side, appearing to be the devoted husband, but it was all a fabrication. The image was carefully crafted and rehearsed, just another part of the relentless royal machine one Diana was quickly learning to navigate. She offered a smile for the press, waved gracefully to adoring crowds, and kept up the flawless facade. But inside she was falling apart, her pain hidden where no one dared to look. The public wouldn't learn the real story until much later. Only after Diana's death did her closest friends reveal the truth. On the 12th day of that ill-fated honeymoon, Diana made a decision that would change her future and, in the end, seal her fate. She chose to push back not with drama or confrontation, but with strategy and patience. Diana decided to play the long game. She started keeping careful records. Every late-night call Charles made to Camilla, every time he wore one of Camilla's gifts, every cutting remark, every moment she felt invisible, all of it went into her secret diary, hidden deep in her luggage. And for safety, Diana made multiple copies. One letter ended up with a trusted confidant, another was hidden away in Kensington Palace. The third went straight to her lawyer, along with specific instructions: if anything happens to me, let this be shared. Diana had reached a sobering realization within her marriage. She had no real power. She was cornered, surrounded by walls she could never climb. But she understood that information was a powerful currency. By documenting everything, she began to reclaim control. In the end, truth became her weapon. If she couldn't have love, or even the semblance of a true partnership, then at the very least, when the facade finally broke, the world would know exactly whose fault it was. That night, she wrote a thought in her journal, a thought that would echo far beyond her own lifetime. Charles believes he can have it all: a wife, a mistress, his title, his desires. But he is gravely mistaken. Because I refuse to simply disappear in silence, I will not let myself be erased from this story. When this marriage finally falls apart, the truth will come out. Everyone will see what Charles put me through. Camilla will never get the crown she craves, not if I have anything to say about it. At just 20 years old and fresh from her so-called honeymoon, Diana was already building her strategy to survive. This wasn't about revenge for revenge's sake. It was about self-preservation, a desperate act in a world that seemed designed to break her spirit. They returned to London in the middle of August. Headlines declared their honeymoon a triumph. Palace spokespeople painted a perfect picture of bliss. The Queen gave her approval, and the nation felt reassured. Everyone believed all was well. On the surface, it looked like a portrait of royal happiness. But within Kensington Palace, Diana's world became a silent wasteland. She had entered the most desolate chapter of her life. Charles quickly slipped back into his old routines, spending time with familiar friends, and of course with Camilla. Words between Charles and Diana were sparse, exchanged mainly for appearances at public events. At night, he chose to sleep in rooms far from hers, deepening a distance that no one outside the palace could truly see. To Diana, Charles left no doubt their wedding night felt less like the beginning of a life together and more like an obligation crossed off a list. Even the main purpose of it all, producing an heir, could wait. In response, Diana threw herself completely into her role in the public eye. She was everywhere at charity events, ribbon cuttings, and hospital wards. No matter where she went, excitement followed. People simply couldn't get enough of her. There was a magnetic pull to this young princess, a touch of sorrow behind her smile. She was elegant, approachable, regal, and yet so real. On the surface, she seemed flawless, but there was always a hint of vulnerability. Charles couldn't take it. He grew jealous with each news headline, and every time the crowd erupted for Diana. He resented the attention she received, hearing her name called out while his own faded into the background. Every day, the distance between them grew. Diana felt it deeply, the coldness setting in, the sharp realization that she was changing from a beloved companion into an inconvenient afterthought. Then, just as despair threatened to overwhelm her, everything changed. Diana discovered she was pregnant. Now, she held something no one could overlook. She was carrying the future of the House of Windsor. Suddenly, she wasn't just the extra wife, she was essential. Inside her was the next in line, a future king. Overnight, Diana became indispensable. Her well-being mattered, not just to her family, but to the whole nation. Charles, despite keeping his distance, had to keep up appearances, at least until their child was born. It was important that Diana seemed content and thriving. But those months of pregnancy were painful for her, a constant struggle with morning sickness, made worse by bulimia, and her mood rocked by hormones and the weight of depression. Still, Diana's determination only grew stronger. She came to realize something new: if she gave birth to a son, the balance of power would shift. As the mother of Britain's future monarch, she would hold a status that not even Charles, Camilla, or the Queen could take away. And on June 21, 1982, Prince William was born. From that moment on, Diana's true reckoning began, not from gossip or public outrage, but through something more subtle. She discovered her sense of purpose in motherhood, transforming herself into a new kind of royal matriarch, one the monarchy had never seen before. Diana broke royal traditions at every step. Instead of handing young William over to nannies, she held him close, determined to witness every milestone and every first. She brought her son along on state visits and public events, revealing a side of royal life rarely seen, the gentle warmth of a mother unafraid to show her love. In choosing this path, Diana became unassailable. The world loved her not just as a princess, but above all as a mother. She became an icon, the people's princess, known for embracing AIDS patients and sitting by the bedsides of the sick. Diana turned her own pain into deep empathy for others. Charles watched as Diana went through this transformation, worry growing inside him. She wasn't just surviving, she was thriving. And as she flourished, Charles began to realize he had completely misjudged her. On their wedding day, he pictured Diana quietly fading into the background, happy with status, jewels, and ceremony. But she had no intention of being invisible. She evolved into a presence greater than the institution itself, a force that slipped beyond his control. Diana became a woman shaped by heartbreak, but driven to seek a purpose far greater than the romantic dream she had once been promised. If love had failed her, she would create something more enduring, a mission, a reckoning, a legacy rooted in truth. The fairy tale, that shimmering myth, ended quietly on July 28, 1981, at 11:47 p.m., when Charles confessed his heart had never truly belonged to her. The final farewell to that dream came on their wedding night, when his touch was cold and distant. The final whisper of hope faded during a honeymoon shadowed by longing glances for someone else. But from the ashes of that broken dream, Diana changed. She became something new, stronger, fiercer, unyielding, a royal rebel who refused to follow the script, who remembered every slight, every wound, and who turned her suffering into armor. Diana made sure that when their secrets finally came to light, no one could paint her as the villain, and in the end, the truth did emerge. The Morton biography, that infamous Panorama interview, the messy divorce, and all those headlines. Finally, the world saw everything Diana had recorded. Every glimpse of her difficult early years as Charles's wife. In time, every secret came out. The public began to understand what that wedding night really meant, not the beginning of a fairy tale, but the first page of a nightmare. Charles secured his legacy and heir, popular approval, and in the end Camilla by his side, though only after Diana's untimely death cleared the way. But there was one thing he could never claim: the deep, unwavering love of the public. The sympathy of an entire nation belonged to Diana, not to him. She made sure he could never rewrite their story, or claim to be the one who suffered. It all began in that silent London bedroom, with darkness pressing in, as Diana made her decision. If she had to endure suffering, she would make sure she was heard. If her marriage felt like captivity, the world would see the bars. Charles may have reduced her to little more than a formality, a requirement to fulfill, but Diana was determined that his own sense of duty would one day turn against him. The so-called wedding of the century, the fairy tale, the flawless royal union was all just a facade. Diana spent the remainder of her tragically short life breaking down that illusion, determined that everyone knew the true story. It was never about revenge just for the sake of it. Diana was not driven by cruelty. Instead, she chose the only weapon she had left: honesty. And she wielded that truth without hesitation, slicing through lies and appearances, using it to protect herself until her final breath.